Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, man.
Okay, I can mute myself like usual. So
Well, now I'm in the introduction. We didn't start the show. It took like forever for it to start. We're on live, everybody, on YouTube. This is another special edition, real quick, of the Fed Up Gamers podcast. But it's going to be a short show because my fellow, well, I shouldn't say fellow because that would indicate that I am like him. But my Nintendo apologist friend is going to explain to me why he believes that Nintendo got it all figured out now. Why they've come through the worst of the worst and now they're on the up and up. So I want to hear this so that way after he says what he says, I can bring up all of my counterpoints about Nintendo that I've said for years, which still remain to be true to this day. So please tell me what you were going to say about why you think Nintendo is in a good space now, man.
so right now is like we have a very unique time period for Nintendo. Uh, we're seeing uh, third party support back in like GameCube the days.
What? What?
Yeah,
What?
we're seeing that strange third party support where we have a lot of the third party games, the Resident Evils, the Call of Duties, which we don't have all of them yet, not yet.
Oh,
But we are seeing a lot of people hop on the train, and a lot of people that normally weren't on the train are now on the train, like your Bethesdas and your Blizzards. Like we have a lot of third party support right now. We don't have all the high end third party support, but I say right now there's actually so many games going on right now that it's just like it's very hard to keep up if you're an avid gamer, if you're a gamer that likes, your third party games. I mean, look, you have the new Mortal Kombat, like doing extremely well. They made sure that that game ran flawlessly. It's getting great reviews for how it runs on handheld in comparison to other things. But I mean, if we're looking at it, like Nintendo's in a good space right now. They do have a couple of minor faults. People are still upset that we're 2.5 years in and there's still no messaging
oh,
on the
oh,
device.
oh.
I do want messaging because it's very hard for like I have friends on my friend list and it's kind of hard for me to get in contact with them if I added them from playing with them.
am
Like,
I
hey,
am I
do you want
talking
to
to the
play?
same person who last year when we did this same podcast was given every reason why Nintendo didn't need to have messaging, why we should have to use third party apps instead, and how it was easier to use third party apps instead?
That was
Am I talking to the same person?
that was for voice chatting. I still am under the belief that as a handheld system, that it was very smart for them to move to a third-party device for
Oh,
voice chat. But on the other hand, you still have the direct messaging that allows you to organize and set up games with people that you may not have contact with outside of your system. I can't
come
just
on,
go.
man. You know,
I can't go in my friends list
why
and
are you
say,
giving
"Hey,
them credit
that
for that,
person."
man? Why are you like? Here's the thing. Here's what I don't understand, and this is what I said, and I said it before it came out. I said it when it was out, and it's still true to this day that Nintendo still doesn't care about Western gamers. And I don't know why you're giving them credit for figuring out something that they figured out in the 1990s with Game Boy. They figured out how to have a good handheld console. That's what they figured out. They always knew how to do that. I don't think that they've ever had a problem with their handhelds getting quote unquote third party support. And I put that in quotation marks. I put that in quotation marks because whenever you say third party support to me, I'm thinking to myself, they're going to get the major AAA games that are coming out for the Xbox One and the PS4, and they're not, which is further proof that 2 years ago I was right when I said I think that the Nintendo Switch is really just a fancy handheld that they're going to say can play games at home on your TV, and they're going to try to say that it's a hybrid, but it's really not. Because when you say third party games, getting third party games from like 5 years ago, to me, that's not a big accomplishment, man.
Okay, well,
I want them to come out with like if they're supposed to be this major hybrid console, that would mean that it should be able to play higher end stuff that the PS4 and Xbox One is getting, but they're not getting those games. They're not getting those games still.
They're
Yeah,
getting
they're
Doom
gonna get
Eternal next year. They're getting Wolfenstein Youngblood. They got the new Mortal Kombat. I
the
mean, they're not getting Madden because EA is being EA and like, oh, well, for Madden, we don't believe that the Switch is conducive to how we view Madden. Like that's EA. We can't make EA do anything, and EA is digging their own hole.
But
So,
there's tons of games that are like that though that are coming out in the next year that are major games that still don't come out to the Switch because one, it's a handheld, and two, what are they going to do, man, in the next year or so when these games start coming out with even greater graphics and they can't handle it? Like most third-party companies ain't trying to scale stuff down, man. And even though they have quote unquote great sales, I mean, they've always had great sales on their handhelds, but now the cost of developing the game, I don't think it's conducive for them to want to port that game over in terms of the amount of money that they'll get back, which is why I think that they're not going to get those major third-party games still. So they still have the same problem that they had last gen with the Wii U that I said that they would have, which is they didn't make the console strong enough so that developers can't use that excuse that they have to, and here's the word, optimize the game. They didn't make it strong enough, so now they have to sit around and get companies who are willing to port something over 3 years after it came out, 4 years after it came out. Does that sound real familiar? It does, because the Wii U was getting the same treatment, except the difference is that everybody's praising the Switch for getting basically the same thing that the Wii U was getting. It's doing the exact same thing, except the difference is that they're getting games from 5 years ago and 6 years ago and 8 years ago onto their console.
Well, there's also the lack of a drought from Nintendo, where if you remember the Wii U, there was large periods of time where Nintendo wasn't developing games. But if you look at the Switch, we're getting a mixture between ports and brand new games every single year. I mean, this year alone, we have a brand new Animal Crossing, a brand new Luigi's Mansion, Mario Maker 2, like a new Yoshi. That's just this year. Astral Chain, new IP.
You mean it's not an Animal Crossing Amiibo Fest?
No, it's a brand new Animal Crossing.
Wait. You mean it's an actual game that their fans wanted? It's not a Metroid Federation Force game? It's nothing like that?
Nope. It is mainline Animal Crossing. And then and Pokemon. Forget Pokemon. Can't forget Pokemon. Like, that's going to sell gangbusters on its own. Like, it's Pokemon. Like, this year, that's just this year. Like, if we look at every year the Switch, I mean, we had Smash Brothers in December. We had Tornado Golden Country. We had, what else is there? I mean, like, we had Mario Tennis Aces. People love their Mario Tennis. Mainline Mario Tennis. Kirby Star Allies last year.
I can't believe that you're listing these games as reasons of why Nintendo got it figured out.
No. So basically, here's what everyone has always said. If Nintendo makes their first-party games, like, the system will sell. The system sells on first-party games. Like, third-party games for Nintendo fans are negligent. That's why if you look at the sales numbers, look, you have like Mario Odyssey at 14 million, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the same Mario Kart from the Wii U at another 15 million. You have Pokemon at 10 million, you have Zelda at 10 million, you have Splatoon at 8 million. Like, you have like 1-2 Switch at 2.7 million or something, Mario Tennis at 2.8 million, something like that. Like, these are the games that are selling the most on the system. But
okay.
If you look at the indie games, you look at the third-party games, they're selling enough that these companies are porting over everything they got. Like, we got Final Fantasy not. Well, I mean,
I never knew that you'd be so happy to be a Nintendo fan and be getting ports, man. I just never thought I'd see the day. I never thought I'd see the day where you, the ultimate Nintendo fan, the man with the 3-year and 5-year Nintendo Power subscription all the time, is now you're okay and excited about getting ports
You
of
you
games that already been out for years. I just
you.
can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Let me explain why.
I can't believe it, man.
I'm gonna explain why because it makes perfectly good sense at this point in time. Uh, a couple of years ago, I moved to Colorado for work. In the process, the company pretty much bellied up, and I had already moved all my equipment, all my stuff out there, my consoles, my systems, everything, like all my games, and I lost the remaining amount of my collection for the third time. So let's see, with the GameCube, a couple people in a group of people we know stole the majority of the games, and then the other half of the games got lost. So I have nothing from my GameCube collection. My Wii collection, I left with an X thinking that I was going to go back and get it, lost every single game from that collection. And then the last little bit of games that I had on my 3DS and my GameCube that was like 10 years old got lost in Colorado. So until the Switch came out, I had no Nintendo consoles. I had no consoles at all. So I'm very happy, and I don't have a PlayStation either. I don't know what happened to that. I think I traded it in at some point. So I'm very happy to be getting ports from GameCube games and PlayStation games onto the Switch because these are a lot of the games that I grew up with, a lot of the games that I was playing, and a lot of the time that I owned and wanted to have in a collection, but I no longer have those collections. So now I'm able to have those games in collections. And so I'm very happy for all these ports because this is now becoming like my favorite system of all time because it's bringing all the games that I loved on my GameCube, all the games that I loved on my Wii, all the games that I loved on my PlayStation, and so on to the Switch. So I'm happy for ports because I can rebuild my collection onto one system that I want to have. Like I have, like if I look at this right now, I have Ikaruga, which I had on GameCube. I have like, actually don't really have that many right now because a lot of that's my biggest issue right now is Capcom won't put things on a cartridge. But I have Super Street Fighter 2 Final Challengers, which is basically Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which I had on Genesis, which was my favorite fighting game of all time. So, like, at that point in time, the only thing that I'm missing is like Soul Calibur. If they put a Soul Calibur on here, like this system is the goat for me. But that's why I'm happy for ports is because I don't have the games to play anymore like other people where they have all their systems. So I need the ports in order to play those games.
Now that's you. All right. Now I can understand you having that. So I can't really knock your philosophy for that. But what I'm wondering is this for a person who has been a Nintendo fan and didn't lose their games, how are they justifying this? For instance, you mentioned that they have all these games coming out first party. But even some of the games that you mentioned, like Luigi's Mansion and you know, and stuff like that, they don't even have official release dates. Like there's still no official release date for Luigi's Mansion 3. There's still no official release date for Bayonetta 3. There's still no official release date for the core Pokemon RPG. There's still no official release date for Metroid Prime 4. No one's seen the game. And you said that there's no like there's no drought of Nintendo games. And in a sense, I guess that's true. But the thing is, for somebody who's been a Wii U owner, I've seen most of these games. So it's like the only new games that I would see on the Switch that I really didn't get a chance to play on the Wii U is probably Super Mario Odyssey. Super Mario Odyssey, and if I wanted to play the Project Arms, maybe that. But like, maybe Splatoon, but I'm not like big into first person multiplayer shooters all the time.
It's third person
or third person shooters. I'm not really into. I'm not really into that stuff. I'm not saying that it's a bad game, but that's not really my thing. I think the only online game I played that's a first person shooter or a third person shooter is Halo. That's it. So I don't get how this now. Like I still see the same droughts from Nintendo's first party. One game a year, maybe 2 games a year, and not enough major third-party games that are coming out on time. Keyword here is on time with the rest of the systems.
So I'm gonna go through my list of first-party games that are Switch exclusives. So that way you have an idea of just how many games they're doing. Almost 6 new games a year. The only issue is they tend to not put them at the beginning of the year and they stack them near the end of the year. So we have Splatoon 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Smash Brothers Ultimate, ARMS. Uh, we can't count Mario Kart. I guess we can't really count Pokken either because Pokken Tournament's basically it got DLC, so it could possibly count Mario Tennis Aces,
All that
Kirby
type
Star
of stuff.
Allies.
All that type of stuff is on the Wii U except for the Xenoblade 2. And I actually think Xenoblade
Mario Tennis Aces is not on the Wii U.
it's not, but they have a Mario Tennis game that they
But I
basically
mean,
took the
every
engine from and just removed it and kind of upgraded it.
well, they put a Mario game on every system. That would be like saying, well, it has a Mario game, it has a Zelda game, it has a Smash Brothers, it has a Pokemon, it has a Xenoblade or whatever. I mean, like Nintendo puts out.
But those games came out last year, though. All them games came out last year.
Okay,
that was 2018.
Yeah,
what
2019 is going to be Yoshi, Pokemon, Luigi's Mansion. I mean,
I haven't seen no release date for Luigi's Mansion.
Luigi's Mansion hasn't been dated yet. You're right. We're hoping.
I haven't seen no date for that. I ain't seen no release date for that.
Luigi's Mansion and Yoshi were both slated for 2018, and they got pushed back to 2019. The reason you haven't seen Metroid Prime is because they canceled it and restarted development. They put out a video on that a couple weeks
ago. You know what that means, right? That means that it's going to go to this other system that they're coming out with, the real home console. Real home console that I said that I would wait for them to come back out with, because I said that I refuse to buy this system until they give me a true home console. And there's no way, and you can quote me on this, I'm going to go on the record. This is my best segment of the show. I'm going on the record and saying that any new Zelda game, this new Metroid game, will be on this new Nintendo home console type system. Period. I don't know if they'll port it back down, but it'll be on the newer system. They'll make you buy the newer system. Because think about it. This generation's almost over. They're about to come out with whatever it is for the PlayStation 5 or the new Xbox or whatnot in probably two to 3 years, right? There's
PlayStation 5 is next year.
Yeah, so there's no way. Do you think third-party companies are going to continue to downgrade and optimize their games for the Nintendo Switch? The answer is no. Now, I think they'll make brand new versions of those games like they do for most of the Nintendo handhelds, but I don't think that that's enough to satisfy people who are trying to get another home console, because, like as I mentioned, Nintendo's handhelds always sell. Always. They can always sell handhelds. But in terms of them having to be able to compete with the newer consoles to get those games, they have to make a new system that has power and has the ability to run those games so that the third-party companies can't use that excuse that they don't want to optimize it because they're being lazy. Because we know third-party companies are lazy. They don't want to do anything. They don't want to fix games. Look at EA. They've been bringing out the same NHL game for the last 5 years, probably like 7 years now, and they still have the same bugs, same issues, same stuff that happens during the in-game modes, and they still haven't fixed it. Why? Because they don't have to. Because gamers don't make them fix it. Because they're lazy. They don't have to fix it.
We this year has really exposed a lot of companies and how lazy they are. I mean, you have the Fallout 76 debacle.
How would you classify that as a debacle though? Because isn't that just people being mad that the game isn't what they thought it was?
No, because they promised that this game was going to be super high-end graphics. It was going to be beautiful, luscious environments. On top of that, they said that, loot boxes and microtransactions weren't going to be in the game the way that they're just going to be strictly cosmetic. And they went back on that. They sold people these collector's editions that they said that they were going to have canvas bags and then sent out nylon bags. Like the way Bethesda handled that entire ordeal, like it was like the game was broken within days. Like the market comment people had already hacked it and created super powerful characters. People were quitting in droves. It was just like the way they handled it. I was like, you know what? I was going to buy Skyrim, but then I started reading up on Bethesda, and they said, the reason Fallout 76 failed is because for all the years, Bethesda has always put out buggy games, but the modding community has always fixed their games. And this is the one time where they couldn't put out a quality product because they're so used to putting out crap, and they're having their mods fix it, and now they don't have mods to save them.
Well, when it comes to stuff like that, isn't that the norm though now for most third parties? They come out with broken games and they patch them up, and then they claim that the patches fix them, but they really don't. But then they just stay, broken because who cares? Because they're selling people stuff and they got your money, so they're not going to go back and redo the game. They just say, "Well, we'll fix it next time," and then they never do.
Well, there's been a few games where they came out with lacking content and then they've been improved upon, but first impressions are what matters the most for a lot of gamers. So it's like, what is that? What's the little space adventure game that everyone was all hyped for?
You're not talking about No Man's Sky or something like that?
Yes, No Man's Sky. The game that got horrible reviews because of what it was, but supposedly has done a complete 180 in what it is.
But, I mean, that was Sony's big thing to show their power on their system. You know what I'm saying? That was their big thing. That was their. See, I have all these PlayStation guys who are watching and who are a part of the show normally. They weren't on tonight, but they always give me these reasons of why Sony is the most ultimate this and ultimate that. And I understand them getting all these exclusives, but I'm gonna go. I
don't understand why Sony gets all these exclusives.
I've never understood that either. And
here's why. You know why? Because if you look at so what PlayStation
I've never got it.
PlayStation has sold 90 million systems, 100 million systems almost.
Mm-hmm.
They do not move games on that system.
I was just telling somebody that. I was telling somebody that for all the systems that they have, they don't sell as many games.
It's like what
as you would think.
Look at Horizon Zero Dawn. It just broke 10 million. It's the first game on PlayStation 4 to break 10 million. You have 100 million install base, and you can't break 10 million with a first-party title. Like, the Switch has, 35 million, 36 million install base, and they have 6 games over 10 million. But that's because these are franchises that are known. But even if you don't take the major franchises, ARMS, which is a fun game, but doesn't last forever because it's a fighting game. It suffers the fighting game thing. It's still sold over 2.5 million. It's still putting up more numbers than some of the established fighters like Guilty Gear.
I agree.
And if you look at it, it's like
I agree.
The quality of the product Nintendo puts out is like it's almost unrivaled. And like a lot of the fighting games that are put out are very well done, but fighting games just don't sell in general. I mean, Fighter Z is one of the best fighting games, but then you look at Smash Brothers, and Smash Brothers puts up 12 million in 3 weeks.
Yep,
12 million in 3 weeks. Those numbers are disgusting. Like they're like 12 million in 3 weeks. Pokemon Let's Go, basically a port with a revisioning of Generation 1 does 10 million in 2 months. Mario Odyssey does 10 million in 3 months. I mean, we know for a fact Animal Crossing did 16 million on 3DS or DS, one or the other. I can't remember.
Even though it makes me mad that they never came out with a version of that, a real version of that on the Wii U.
Yeah, they did screw you guys on the Wii U.
Okay, at least you're willing to admit it because like I said, I'm willing to go on the record right now. I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to go on the record again. And I'm going to say the same way that I went on the record years ago and told everybody who was listening under the sound of my voice that Colin Kaepernick would not play again in the NFL. People didn't believe me. I said he wouldn't play another down. I said that was the end of his NFL career. And the same way I just went on the record earlier, I'm going to go on the record again right now and say that the next generation, Xbox is going to win. Xbox is going to win.
You know
And
what?
I'm going to tell you
They've been
why.
positioning themselves. They've been positioning themselves for it. They've been buying up new studios, so you know there's going to be a lot of new interesting things coming out of those studios. They have Game Pass, which is a phenomenal service that a lot of people need to get involved
Yeah,
with.
but Game Pass has been done before. I don't know
Game
why
Pass has
people.
been done before, but I'm saying on a
I,
console, not really.
yeah, it has. If you had Sega Channel in the mid '90s, you had Game Pass. You know what I'm saying? Like that's been done. Like that's been done before, and that's what's funny to me, yo. Like what's missed in all this is that a lot of this stuff that's innovative now, Sega did already, but yet they're a dead company, which tells me probably if somebody was really smart, what they would have done is they would have partnered with Sega to make another system. They would have said, "We'll spend the money to make the system, but we want to put your name on it, and we'll put your games on it." Just for the name recognition, brand recognition, and for the fact that Sega's always forward thinking in
I
terms of
think the issue
other
is,
stuff.
I think the reason Sega's a dead company is because they were moving too far forward, too fast, and the market couldn't keep up. Imagine when, if Sony continues with their trend of having like ridiculously expensive consoles on launch, like they're going to really hurt themselves.
I agree with that. I think
They
that's the reason why I think Xbox is going to win. I think
and
their next system is going to be powerful enough to have the great graphics and the great games, and I think they're going to have the first party and more importantly, second party titles that are going to rival the IPs that Sony's had because Sony doesn't really come out with as much as people say they come out with new IPs, they really don't. They come out with a lot of sequels once the IPs do well. I think Microsoft's going to introduce a whole bunch of stuff that has not been seen before in the next generation. And I think that their online structure and infrastructure is going to make them win. Not to mention the fact that they've always pretty much have had the best controller in the business.
hey, if
And
you
they will
haven't
continue
noticed,
to do so.
if you haven't noticed, the Switch's Pro controller and the Wii U's Pro controller are almost mimics of the Xbox controller now.
Well, the Wii U was unique though. The Wii U Pro controller was unique because I don't think any other system has never done the analog above the buttons.
Yeah.
I don't think any other system's done that. And plus, I don't think that the D-pad. I think the D-pad on the Pro controller for the Wii U is way better still. Which Nintendo still makes the best D-pads. I must say.
The Switch's D-pad is trash in comparison. Like I could like they didn't like so all the other D-pads have like this little ball on the inside of the center of the D-pad so that you can only press one direction at a time. Well, the Switch doesn't have that. So you can input two different directions at the same time and like complete opposite sides and really mess up yourself.
Yeah.
So that is one flaw with the Pro controller. But I mean, like
which
right
is
now,
funny because they had a good Pro controller and then they went away from that design for the next generation, which is dumb.
but this Pro controller is actually pretty decent. I've played a lot on it. It's very comfortable.
It's worth
Very
70
comfortable.
bucks. It's worth 70 bucks, and it doesn't give you the same 80-hour lifespan, does it?
It gives me 40-hour lifespan, but it also comes with an NFC reader and wireless further away. But the Switch's Pro controller, and it doesn't take batteries.
Well, neither did the Wii U Pro controller.
It did?
It did not. It was basically 80 hours. It was 80 hours, man.
On a chart, you could just charge it and then
charge it in 80 hours of gameplay, man.
That's not a bad. Yeah, but it didn't have all the features. It didn't have the HD Rumble. The HD Rumble.
It rumbled.
No, the HD Rumble. You haven't had HD Rumble. This HD Rumble is pretty legit that they have in the Joy-Cons and the.
Oh, you're talking about the stuff that they use to pour the stuff in and all that other stuff. And
no, they have a new Rumble style of Rumble with the controller. They invented for the Switch. It's called HD Rumble, and
Yeah, I think it rolls on like one part of the controller to make shapes and stuff like that and do certain
no.
things,
You can.
doesn't it?
It's so basically developers have like insane control over how Rumble works. They can. It's not just like Rumble as in oh it shakes because something happens. They can trigger it to shake one side of the controller or shake the other side of the controller or gradually like kind of like where you feel like stuff is in your hands and everything. So
Like when you're playing Project Racing Neo or something, if you get hit on the left side of the controller moves.
well, it's not even just that. Like if you look at the Joy Cons have it a lot better. You can like they use it in 1-2 switch very well. So like you can have this glass of water, or it would be like a glass with ice in it, and you could shake your Joy-Con, and the ice cubes would shake, and you could count the number of ice cubes that are shaking, and then you could place it on your hand at the same time, and you could roll like a marble in your hand. And the way the rumble would work, it would feel like something was literally rolling in your hand. It's like detailed like that.
See, but here's the thing, and I'm not the biggest Joy-Con fan because I think that the Joy-Con controller is not a good controller in terms of like long-term play.
uh,
I think it's too small.
the Joy Cons are perfect,
I don't
but
know
the only
about that, man. I don't know about it. I think they're
if
probably one of the worst controllers that Nintendo's made, man.
it depends on how you're playing, because if you're playing with them in the hand holder, yes, they're going to be very uncomfortable for you. But if you're just holding them in your hand and you're playing them like you have both of them in your hand and you're just playing, like you can literally like play from any position you ever want. Like I,
Come
I've
on,
seen
man. Let's keep it real. If you
I've
had a
seen
choice between the PS3 controller, the Xbox One controller, and the Joy-Con, which one would you choose?
honestly, I would choose the Joy-Con because the Joy-Con is
Oh, come on.
listen. The
There's the
Joy-Con.
Nintendo apologist
No, no,
right
no, no, no,
there.
no. Listen, I can look like so. If I want to play with a PlayStation controller or Xbox controller or my Switch Pro controller, I have to have both hands on it at the exact same time, and it has to be in the middle of my body because I'm having both hands on it. With the Joy Cons, I can literally lay on my couch and have my hands separated in the most comfortable position where
Oh,
I can
man.
put one hand behind my head and continue to play the game. I could put one hand behind my head and play the game while laying on the couch. You know how comfortable it is to not have to have your hands sitting in front of you, and you can just like, okay, I'm resting on one hand, and I got the other hand just laying on my lap, and it's like, and you can still play the game perfectly fine. It gets a little awkward if you're not used to that, but it's good. And then you have games like Pokemon, which only require one Joy-Con. You can literally play with one hand, so you just play with one hand. Like
So what are they going to do? What is Nintendo going to do? And this is coming up. What are they going to do when these third party companies start going to these higher end games with higher end graphics? How soon are they going to come out with this new home console? How soon are they going to come out with this console that can handle stuff
I
graphically and
I don't
switch
think
up
they're gonna do a
the
home
and,
console,
sw-
honestly.
and switch up the controller scheme? Because I'm thinking they have to do some sort of console where if you don't want to play in handheld mode or something, it has the power and the nuts and bolts to be able to run these higher end games so that they stay competitive. Because I like, do they really want to just be in the handheld market for the next uh for the foreseeable future and compete with phones and all this other stuff? Do they really want to do that?
3DS sold 27 million in Japan. PlayStation 4 sold 8 million. You tell me.
That's
Oh,
not, but
hold on, hold on, hold on,
that's not a
hold
good
on.
indication
No,
though.
no, no, no. PlayStation sold 8 million in Japan. PlayStation 4 sold 8 million. Like I said, 3DS sold 27 million. Switch is going to pass PlayStation in sales next week in Japan.
Yeah,
Literally
but
next week.
but we're talking about
And we're only
Japan.
we're only we're only we're only like 2.5 years into the Switch right now.
We're
So
talking about you're only confirming what I've been saying for the last 2 years that you guys both argued with me about when I said Nintendo doesn't care about Western gamers. They don't care.
well, you have to remember this generation is like the first time that Western games have started to be embraced in Japan. So That's why a lot of the Western games are starting to sell better in Japan because they didn't sell in Japan. Like you could look at an Xbox. Xbox sells like 50 to 100 a week in Japan. It's probably being sold to like people stationed on the military base out there.
I don't know, man. See, here's the thing. I I think that Nintendo has a good thing with their market in terms of the Switch, in terms of it being their handheld. But what I'm concerned about is, has a gamer who would like to play Nintendo games and major third-party games on my Nintendo as well. I fear that when the newer generation continues to be the people who start to buy games, they're not going to go out and buy Switches. I don't think. I think they're going to keep buying PlayStation 4s and Xbox Ones until Nintendo gives them a reason for them to be able to stop buying or to complement their PlayStation with a Nintendo Switch, because I don't see the point. Like, if you're a PlayStation 5 owner, I would say, what is the real reason for you to get a Nintendo Switch other than playing Nintendo games? And I don't think that the Nintendo games come out often enough for you to justify buying it.
It doesn't matter if they come out often enough. It just matters if they come out enough for you to get your money's worth.
But
If you get your, if
but
you
for you
get
to
your
get your
money's worth,
money, but for you to get your money's worth, though,
Smash Brothers is all you need to get your money's worth.
uh,
For
the,
for the average gamer, we're talking about for the average gamer.
the
The average
Smash
gamer,
Brothers, the Smash Brothers crowd is a niche Nintendo market.
it
It
still
is
sold
it is a
12 million.
it is a Nintendo centered market. Now,
And
I,
they're
out of
expanding
out of
it.
those
They're
90
expanding
million,
it.
out of
If you
those 90 million PlayStation 4 people, how many of them do you think are just craving to play Smash Brothers?
you never know.
Oh, come on,
You
man.
never know because we no, the reason I say you never know is because we like PlayStation, like we said, it doesn't move software, so we don't really we can't really say what they play. We said, Horizon Zero Dawn sold 10 million, and that game went on sale for $20 a couple times. Like Spider Man took forever to come out, and that's almost at 10 million. But in the time since Spider Man's come out, Pokemon, Smash, and what Yoshi have come out, and Pokemon and Smash both outsold Spider Man. So it's how many it's almost like people but then if you look at something like Call of Duty does 20 something million.
That's the thing, and those games like that don't come out on the Switch, and they don't have the same version that they have. I'm saying, if
I
they
I
had
think
if
I
they had
think
a Call of Duty type game where it was the same game and basically the same graphics with the same online infrastructure, you could probably get some of those people. But what I'm saying is that they don't do that. Nintendo doesn't do that. Nintendo doesn't get those type of games. They don't get, like you said, the Maddens, the NHLs. They just started getting the NBA 2Ks. Like,
and those
I'm
are
I'm
selling
saying
well.
I'm saying they need way more of that, and I don't see them getting any more of that in the
um,
future. I see them
so
getting ports of older games, but I don't see them getting the type of support that they would need to bring some
so
of those other gamers over. I don't see it.
they could get those games if those companies wanted those games on the system. Those games could be on the system. They're like they're getting we're getting Doom Eternal, which isn't even coming out yet until next year, and
Come
it's going to
on,
be
man.
on.
How many Nintendo fans are really clamoring to play Doom? Come on, man. Let's keep
Some
it real, man.
There's a lot. There's
Come
a lot.
on, man.
There,
We all know that the Nintendo staunch base is not clamoring to go around to go buy these third-party games that are coming out, like the Dooms and the Wolfensteins and all that. They're not.
Wolfenstein didn't sell for any system though. You can't really blame that on Nintendo fans. It just didn't sell. But Doom sold very well on the Switch, in fact.
Okay, let's look at the percentages then. All right. You mentioned the install base. Let's
Yeah.
come up with a way to rate, and this is our last segment because I know that you got to go. But let's come up with a way to rate in the future a successful game in terms of the percentage of the install base that buys it. So, for instance, I would say a successful game of the install base, for example, and this is being a very old one, but I would say the Wii U with something like Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Most of the people who had a Wii U bought that game. You know what I'm saying?
Do we know
Or,
what the numbers are for Wii U? Nintendo hasn't been revealing the Wii U numbers.
well, I know they sold just over 10 million for their install base. They didn't really get that much, but what I do know is that Legend of Zelda sold millions of copies on the Wii U. I do know that much.
It more than likely did.
And I do know that the Mario Kart also sold millions of copies.
Mario Kart sold like 8 million.
Yeah,
Something like that. And
and for
Splatoon
their
sold like 4 million.
yeah, and for their base, in terms of their install base, for 4 million out of like 13 million or something like that to get a game, that's unbelievable. Like you mentioned that PlayStation 4 has 90 million people, right?
And Splatoon was Splatoon was a new IP.
Exactly. So I'm saying that like those would be probably the marks of a successful install base. I would say if half your install base gets a game, I would call that a killer app. Would you not?
If we look at whenever the Switch launched, if you remember, that was a real funny period in time because it was the first time I think in gaming history where a game outsold the install base on the same system. And Breath of the Wild they sold more Breath of the Wilds than Switches.
which is interesting. So I think that we could do that next show. Next show we can look up, and I actually I love doing this. We can look up games that have been successful, what I would call killer apps. Because remember how they used to say that system needs that killer app?
Yeah.
We're going to define we're going to define real killer apps, like games that everybody buys when they buy that system.
I do have one question for you. How do you feel about the Microsoft and Nintendo relationship, with Nintendo getting recently console exclusive Xbox games?
Have they confirmed that they're really getting those games though?
Well, Cuphead launched on the Switch.
Or is that just speculation?
Cuphead just came to the Switch a few weeks ago.
I mean, I'm not worried about games like that. I mean, I would be more worried about I would say
like a Halo game.
Yeah, like a Quantum. What's the name of that game that came out? Quantum Break or something like that. Something like that.
They're thinking Ori and the Blind Forest is going to be the next game, but they are putting that Forza mobile game on the Switch. That has been confirmed.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's a Forza mobile game.
I don't know. Maybe Microsoft is going to be smart and say, "Hey, Nintendo, we'll make your system for you if you put your name on it, and you allow us to partner with you in the Japan region."
So a couple months ago, before the Game Developers Conference, there was a description for a panel that was going to be there about Microsoft getting Game Pass on other systems, and they specifically mentioned the Nintendo Switch. But then, of course, they had to backtrack and say, "Oh no, we're bringing it to mobile platforms." But with the relationship between Microsoft and Nintendo, it seems very likely that the Game Pass will end up on the Switch. And I would say that it's a good thing for Microsoft and Nintendo to be working together, because I said, what would be really good as Japan has been a market that Microsoft hasn't been able to get into. So
I agree with that.
So I feel that they feel the only way they're going to ever get name recognition or be able to build a brand and break into Japan would be to put their stuff on a Nintendo system. And I think they want to have Game Pass on the Switch so that people can play those Microsoft games. They want those games. People want those games. They want to be able to play them, but they're not going to buy an Xbox for $500.
Yeah, they would have to put old Xbox games on there though. They can't put the new ones on there.
So even if they do that, I think what it would be is that if you really look at it, with the way everyone's moving. You have Google Stadia coming out, and you have everyone looking at these streaming services for games, and Microsoft has got their own streaming service. I think for Microsoft, the wisest thing for them to do would be to work with Nintendo. Have that unity to where Nintendo says, hey, all the third-party games, we're gonna do crossplay with Microsoft. And you know what happens? So if you're crossplay with Microsoft, you get to play on their servers. And therefore, Nintendo's problem with their internet infrastructure, instead of having to build infrastructure in the United States, they piggyback off of Microsoft's infrastructure that's already established. And Microsoft already has plans on expanding their infrastructure because of what they have planned to do. And I think it's a win-win for both. Microsoft gets their games distributed in Japan and starts making more off of sales. Nintendo solves their online problem, and you have the awesomeness of crossplay, being able, like, where me and you, if Nintendo doesn't make that console and you're like, well, this game, like, for example, Fortnite is on your Xbox and is on my Switch, we could play together if we really, really wanted to. And that's like a really cool thing. And then the whole PlayStation keeps saying, oh, like, you can do crossplay with other platforms, but then, like, everyone is coming out like, we keep trying to call and you guys keep telling us no.
I guess we would have to really discuss that, because I would have to give more detail on the ins and outs of, like, their plans for that, because I think there's logic to that, but I don't know.
There's about 20 something games right now that are crossplay between Switch and Microsoft Xbox. About 20 something games.
I'm thinking maybe Microsoft might want to get into just the Xbox platform in terms of PC only or something like that, or a sort of device like a permanent Sega channel type thing that you kind of subscribe to, kind of like Netflix has, where you play their games at. Now I don't know how they would do that, but
like a stream service like Google Stadia, where it's like, okay, you don't have to have the most powerful system because the game is just streaming online through our network, and we have the system installed over, and we have our computers with our graphics cards in house.
Yeah, so I'm wondering how expensive that would be though for them. Even though I don't know, as an old gamer,
I like my games physically. So
yeah, that's kind of
why
a red flag to me.
That's why I've been boycotting Capcom, because it's like, I'm not going to buy a game digitally and not have anything to show for it. Like, I've been avoiding it, and if they don't put it out physically, like, I'm just not going to get it. And like, what's really crazy to me is, like, there's all these indie games that I play that, like, I got a ton of indie games. I got, like, there's some really good indie games out here. Like, I don't know if you play indie games, but there's a lot, and they're getting physical releases now. So you got games like Dead Cells and Overcooked and Shantae. Like, Shantae is a pretty established IP, but she's still indie because she's a small developer with low budget. It's like SteamWorld Dig, Bloodstain, Curse of the Moon. Like, these games are getting, like, physical releases, like Wolverblade. Like, these are awesome games that are easily some of the best games I've played, which is why this system is becoming, like, one of my favorites, because it's like, a lot of these games I would have never touched, like, 10 years ago. I would have never touched them 10 years ago.
That's going to bring up, I can't wait to hear the response from the people who are listening, so they can give me some feedback so we can ask some questions next time. Maybe next time my other co-host will contradict what we have to say. But until then, this is your quick Saturday night version of the Fed Up Gamers podcast. I want to thank you guys for joining us, and I'm thankful that next time we are going to get a lot more into some gaming history, as well as setting up the parameters for what is a killer app. And we'll talk a little bit more about Xbox's plans and Microsoft and Nintendo and their relationship, and they seem to be a little cozy. So we'll get some more detail on that in the weeks to come. So signing out. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Have a great evening.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So until next time, this is Fed Up Gamers. We'll be back. Tune in. Please comment. Please subscribe. At some point, my fellow Nintendo, well, I keep saying fellow, my Nintendo apologist will have a Nintendo fanboy channel. And when he gets that set up, he's going to tell us what that is. So we can go over there and
it's the Nintendo fanboy. It's already set up. I just don't have any videos really.
Okay. So maybe next time we'll have to have you call in from there
with my whole collection.
All right. Then that's what we're going to have to do then. Okay. All right then. Well, until next time, guys. Have a great evening.